You are watching Fight Feed. Today, I will be going through my picks and predictions for this upcoming UFC fight card. It is a UFC Fight Night that's happening in Mexico City with former champion Brandon Moreno versus Steve Erceg. And we're going to dive right in. So, starting off at the top of the card, Jamall Emmers versus Gabriel Miranda. I'm going to go Gabriel Miranda just solely based on Gabriel Miranda's ability to grapple. I feel like he will be able to get Emmers down and ultimately, employ that game plan of, grappling heavy and potentially getting a submission out there. I will say Jamall Emmers did impress me in his last fight, although I believe his last fight was to Nate Landwehr where he lost. I was watching that fight, and I got to say I was rooting for my boy, Nate the Train. And I was watching that last fight with Jamall Emmers. My brother-in-law was watching with me, and he I think had Emmers on a parlay of his, if I'm not mistaken, and he was kind of rooting Emmers on because Emmers was having success early on against Nate Landwehr. But I'm like, dude, you can't count Nate the Train out. Like, I think Nate the Train's gonna get a KO, and what do you know? I think he landed a perfect uppercut to end it. Not to say though that Jamall Emmers isn't skilled. He definitely has a very good chance of winning this fight against Gabriel Miranda. I do think that Miranda will get the win, though, just solely based off of his ability to grapple and potentially get a submission. Next fight on the card, Rafa Garcia versus Vinc from Hell Pichel. I'm going Vinc Pichel all the way, baby. Although Vinc Pichel, similar to our friend Stipe and Jan, he's 42 years old. I've just been very impressed with Vinc Pichel's ability to still go out there and sling with some of the best in the lightweight division. And I think that Vinc Pichel is one of these fighters that he's always going to have that dog in him. And I feel like he could potentially get the win over Rafa Garcia. I haven't really seen too much from Rafa Garcia to where I feel like he would have a better game than Vinc Pichel. I think Vinc Pichel also has that crafty vet status. He's just got a lot of different tools in the bag that he can pull out to win this fight. Ultimately, I think Vinc Pichel would probably win by a decision, or potentially he could get a KO because that's our boy Vinc. He can sling it, and he slings it from hell. So we'll see what happens. Next fight on the card, Loopy Godinez versus Julia Polastri. This might be, I don't know, dumb, but my thought is Loopy Godinez all the way. I think Loopy Godinez is one of these fighters who has had like a supreme amount of activity in the last few years. Actually, I wrote a stat down here. Loopy has had 12 fights in the UFC since 2021. You guys do the math on that, but that means she is fighting very often. So I think that that's always going to play into her favor. Now, in some cases, she might be fighting too often to where, she's not getting recovery, but I don't think that's the case. She hasn't fought in a little bit, but definitely has fought quite a bit when we look at it on over a few years perspective. The other thing is that Loopy is going to have that hometown advantage. Now, as we've seen in some recent cards, that hometown advantage is not always there because there's probably the pressure of trying to perform in front of your hometown. And actually, if we look at like the UFC Sphere card, I think a lot of the Mexican fighters lost compared to won. And so I feel like it could go either way there, but coming into this fight, Loopy's also coming off a 2-fight win streak, so I think Loopy's got it in the bag. In her fights, I've seen her just find a way to kind of dominate her opponents with her style. She's a very active fighter in the sense that she's always moving forward and always trying to advance, whether it be, on the feet with striking or even just trying to get her opponents down to the ground. She's kind of always pushing the fight and putting it at her pace. So I feel like given all of those pieces, I don't think Julia Polastri is going to have the answer to stopping Loopy's game, but we'll see what happens. Next fight on the card, Christian Rodriguez versus Melquizael Costa. This fight, I'm going to have to go with C-Rod. I think that C-Rod he's impressed me quite a bit in the sense that He has had several Dana White's Contender Series alum that he has become like the dark horse for, or ends up shutting down, if you will. His last fight, he beat Austin Bashi, who was a very highly touted Dana White's Contender Series alum. He also took out Cameron Saimon, which was it was an unfortunate fight. I think Cameron Simon's a fun fighter, and I wanted to see him continue to advance. But C-Rod took him out too. C-Rod also gave the first loss to Crimson Chin, Raul Rosas. So I feel like C-Rod he's at this point in his career where he's got a bit of that crafty vet status, and he's also in the new weight class, and I think that he's had some success there. So I feel like he is going to be able to definitely push the pace on Costa. Costa, I feel like he like finds a way to win fights quite a bit. He might be in like, I feel like when I've watched him fight, there's like several fights of his where he's kind of losing and then he's not, right? And he finds a win, or he finds a way to get the win. And so I feel like in this fight that could still potentially happen. There is a bit of a threat there for C-Rod, but I just feel like Christian Rodriguez has such an all-around game where he can stand on the feet and strike with you, hurt you on the feet, but then also get you to the ground and take things there when he needs to. So he just has such a mixed bag of skills that I feel like he'll be able to kind of overpower and not let Costa get any action off. Now this, like I said, could be wrong, but I feel like C-Rod's got it. Next fight on the card, Jose Medina versus Ateba Gautier. I'm gonna go Ateba Gautier just off the fact that he's 6'4", 81-inch reach. He just appears to have a lot better striking than Medina. I don't see Medina being able to handle that type of striker. And just also that size differential is pretty big there, especially with an 81-inch reach in that division. So my pick there is Gautier. I just haven't been super impressed with Medina's game. I think Medina's had some back and forth scraps, but ultimately I just don't see him getting the job done on Saturday. But like I said, could be wrong. Next fight on the card, Edgar Chairez versus CJ Vergara. CJ Vergara is one of those fighters. He's definitely getting up there in age when you look at the division he's in. I feel like I'm definitely going to pick Chairez here. Now, the thing that worries me, Chairez is a very good striker, and he finds a way to get finishes on the feet in almost every one of his fights. But I do recall something that worried me about Chairez in his last fight, which I believe his last fight was at the Sphere. He was winning that fight pretty dominantly, hurting his opponent, Josh Van, quite a bit. And then he started getting landed on to the body. And I feel like the first body shot that Van landed on him hurt him pretty badly to where like he couldn't even hide it whatsoever. And Van just kept going right back to the breadbasket. That is something that is a bit worrying because I think Vergara, although he kind of has like a wrestling, it's not like his style's a bit weird because he has the grappling there. He is a bit of a striker as well. But I feel like Vergara has that stocky, like balled up muscles. And I feel like he could definitely be someone to land a hard body shot and change the entire course of events for Edgar Chairez. Although I feel like Chairez kind of coming off of a loss at the Sphere in front of his people, he's going to want to get that back. And I feel like this is a perfect chance for him to do so. So I'm going to ride on the momentum of Chairez being, back in his hometown from Mexico City and wanting to get the win. So I picked Chairez for this one. And I feel like he'll be able to get it done via a KO or a decision, probably a decision. But Chairez does have that dynamic striking where he could definitely land that kill shot. Next fight on the card, Ronaldo Rodriguez versus Kelvin Borjas. I'm going to go Ronaldo Rodriguez in this fight. I don't think that Borjas I just feel like he doesn't have I don't think he has the game to stop someone like Rodriguez. I think Rodriguez will be able to, kind of go out there and kind of do whatever he wants to Borjas. Borjas has done well in some of his past fights, but I feel like the second the other fighter starts to get that momentum shift in their favor, things kind of fall apart for him. And I feel like that is something that could happen this Saturday as well. I feel like Ronaldo's just going to get the win. I'm not really sure how he'll get the win. I guess I would say he has the potential. Just looking at this fight a little bit further, Ronaldo Rodriguez. So the reason I think Rodriguez will get this win is just looking back at his last fight, I thought he got beat by, I think it was Ode Osborne who fought him. Ode knocked him down, basically knocked him out cold in round 1, and somehow wasn't able to get the finish, which I think is a testament to Ronaldo Rodriguez's ability to kind of recover and bring things back in his favor. Now, given that performance, I wasn't super impressed with Ronaldo Rodriguez, but I feel like when I compare his skill set to Kelvin Borjas, I feel like he'll be able to, like I said, just deploy his game plan that he goes into the fight for, and I think he'll be able to just get the W. I don't know that he'll be able to finish him. I think, like I said, it's probably going to be an unanimous decision, so that's who I'm going with on that one. Next fight on the card is David Martinez versus Saimon Oliveira. Yeah, so for this fight, I'm going to go with Martinez. So Martinez appears to be having his debut this Saturday, the 29th, and he is a Mexican fighter. And then just taking a look at Saimon Oliveira's last few fights, I think he's lost a few fights in a row here. So he definitely doesn't have a momentum on his side. And he also had a pretty bad KO in his last fight. And I think Martinez being a striker, based on the things I'm seeing, I feel like that is not going to play in his favor. So I'm going to go with the hometown hero and pick David Martinez for this one. Ooh, Rosas Jr. versus Vinc Morales. So Raul Rosas, we got Crimson Chin on the card here. I think he's going to get the W. I think that Raul is very, very good. He's not only shown, obviously, a very high-level ground game, but what's very impressive from him in his recent fights is his ability to strike. He's starting to get a lot better at striking. I think 2 fights ago, he actually dropped his opponent with hands. So it's great to see him evolve as a fighter. And I feel like this is just another feather in his cap. You know, he's going into another hometown show in Mexico, and I think that he is the type of fighter that I don't think he gets bogged down at all in the spotlight. I think it actually helps him thrive. So having that home field advantage is going to help him in this case. And I just think overall, comparing the styles of him and Vinc Morales, he's just got an all-around game that's much better than Vinc Morales. And I think we're going to see that Saturday. I feel like Rosas will get a finish probably in round 1 or 2. And the thing is, I can't decide if it would be a submission or a knockout. The thing that I know about Rosas, though, that I appreciate is he's not a fighter, at least in most of his fights. He's not someone who wants to lay and pray. I think he definitely goes for finishes. And so I would bet that he'll be able to get Morales into some compromising positions and ultimately get a finish in round 1 or 2. Next fight on the card, Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer. I think that this fight is a very interesting fight off the fact that Kelvin Gastelum, although he's had moments in his career where he's looked like a world beater, like, for instance, going back, looking at his fight with Adesanya, looking at just some of the fights he's had where he's been able to control and, I mean, dude, he knocked out Bisping, although it was a short notice fight for Bisping. Like, he's got some great wins on his record, but I do think Kelvin is now at the later half of his career, whereas Joe Pyfer's kind of coming in and he's going into his prime. Joe Pyfer's also a massive middleweight, and I feel like he's just riding the momentum of a couple recent wins, specifically. Oh, I guess it's not a couple recent wins because he won and then he lost and then he won. But he did have a very big KO win last June against Barrio. So given all of those details, given the size differential, I think that Pyfer will be able to get get the win. I don't know if he'll actually be able to finish Kelvin Gastelum because Kelvin Gastelum's got a fucking stone head. But I do think Pyfer will get the win. But looking at these odds, I'd say that you can't really go wrong given Kelvin being a plus 410. Kelvin definitely has that Mexican spirit, and he has a way of making fights scrappy. So there's definitely that possibility. But overall, I think Pyfer will be able to get a finish or potentially a decision win. I'm leaning more towards a decision unless he does a submission, because I just feel like Kelvin has this ability to not get KO'd somehow. But hey, anything could happen. Next fight on the card in our co-main event. This is actually probably, I mean, the main event's fucking fire too, though. But Manuel Torres versus Drew Dober. Manuel Torres is actually one of my favorite recent entries at the UFC. But Drew Dober is one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. Actually might be in my top 5. I don't know specifically, but Dober is one of my favorite fighters to watch. That guy goes out there every time ready to swang and bang. And in this fight, the odds actually are perfect in my opinion. A minus 115 to a minus 105. It's basically a pick'em. In this fight, I'm going to have to go with Dober. I feel like although Dober's a little bit older, Dober has just been he's a marauder of the lightweight division. The guy just does not stop moving forward and throwing hands. And what I like about Dober is he's got that size strength advantage in the division. And he's got a granite chin. The guy can just take punishment like no one else. I mean, the last fight he had, even though he's, accumulated quite a bit of damage, he was just continuing to trade with Gene Silva, even though he was catching spinning elbows, catching lead elbow, everything at Gene Silva. If you go watch that fight again, Gene Silva threw the fucking kitchen sink at his face, and Dober somehow was still standing. He got caught with flying knees. Like, it was a crazy fight. I feel like based on the last performances, Torres, I feel like Torres, when I think when he got finished, he got dropped, but he hurt his arm. I feel like I think he got dropped by Ignacio Bahamondes, and his arm was fucked up or something, if I'm remembering correctly. I remember it looked like he was flash KO'd, but then it was his arm that stopped him from being able to continue on, and that's what ultimately ended the fight. But I feel like Torres, he has one of the most nasty elbow knockouts I've ever seen. It's actually on the channel. If you go and look at one of my videos that's labeled top knockouts in the UFC from 2019 to 2024, Torres actually made that list with that elbow. He literally sent the dude to the shadow realm with an elbow. And I feel like this fight could kind of go either way, but ultimately I think that Dober, given his experience, given his ability to find finishes on the feet, I think that he'll be able to, catch Torres with something and potentially hurt him badly or even knock him out. I'm thinking Dober, round 2 finish. Next fight on the card, in the final fight of the card, we've got our former champ, Brandon Moreno, former 2-time champ, that is, and then Steve Erceg. This fight's a difficult fight for me because they're both very high level in striking. Obviously, I think they both have solid ground game too. I mean, Erceg definitely showed a comfort with his ground game when he was going against Pantoja, was able to really match Pantoja kind of in all those positions. Obviously, Pantoja got the better of him in the grappling, but not in a way where you would say he blew him out of the water. And I actually think that Steve Erceg, if he didn't shoot that takedown in round 5, I think most people feel this way. If he didn't shoot a takedown, stayed on the feet, he would have won that fight, in my opinion. Now, what I will say in this fight that is interesting is you got Brandon Moreno, who's going to want to stand and bang, and Steve Erceg is probably not going to have an issue doing that with him either. I feel like Brandon Moreno is going to get the win. Steve Erceg got hurt pretty badly in his last fight, got knocked out. I know that it wasn't I don't think he was expecting it, and obviously, when do you expect it? But it just happened, and I think that it was an interesting it was an interesting fight because, you see Kai somehow is able to land that overhand and just, put his lights out, but normally Steve Erceg doesn't make, those types of errors or mistakes, but I feel like him going up against a crafty veteran in Brandon Moreno, former two-time champ. He's been a champ twice in the flyweight division. I think that Brandon Moreno is going to have not only that experience, but he's got that dog. And Brandon Moreno is he is one of the best and one of my most favorite fighters in the UFC for he's just willing to fucking throw at all times and doesn't give a fuck. So I think Brandon Moreno has all of the skills in this fight to, potentially teach Steve Erceg another lesson about the division. And I don't know or see a finish per se. I think that it could end up just being a 5-round war where these two just scrap back and forth. Ultimately feeling like Brandon Moreno is going to get the W. Now, areas where I feel like Brandon might not get the W is just the size differential. I think that that's going to be an interesting it's going to be interesting optically, but I think also an interesting style differential in terms of Steve Erceg being a lot bigger than Brandon Moreno. So it'll be interesting to see how Brandon handles that, but ultimately I think that he'll be able to kind of handle whatever Steve throws at him. I do think that it's going to be a competitive fight. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I feel like just given that Brandon Moreno's had a very long tenure with the UFC, he was actually let go from the UFC, made his way back, became a champ 2 times. The wars he's had with Davison, and just the overall great scraps that he's had just with other fighters as well. I feel like Brandon Moreno, he's got this one in the bag. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you enjoyed this, make sure you give it a like and comment below who you think is going to win in the main and co-main event fights. And also stay tuned for my recap of this video where I'll also be tallying up other MMA creators' picks and ultimately scoring who had the best picks out of everyone. Thank you guys again. Subscribe, and I will see you soon.